Dad, why is that lady putting the dresses back? Can't she buy them for her little girls? It was the most humiliating moment of Tessa Hayes' life. She thought this was her breaking point. She had no idea. It was just the beginning. What starts as public shame will end in brutal, private blackmail. And the man who just watched her run is the one holding all the cards. Welcome to our channel. We are so glad you're here. We know that hook has you wondering what happens next. Before we dive into Tessa's story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your city. And if you're ready for this emotional journey, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss one of our stories. The phone's buzz vibrated across the cracked laminate countertop, sharp and angry in the pre-dawn quiet. Tessa Hayes didn't need to look at the screen. She knew the number. 7 a.m. on the dot, every single day. This is a final notice for Tessa Hayes regarding account number. Tessa slammed her thumb onto the end call icon, her breath catching in her throat. She stared at the phone as if it were a snake, her own reflection staring back from the dark screen. 28 years old, shadows under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide, and a permanent crease of worry between her brows. She leaned her head against the cold kitchen cabinet. The silence of the tiny apartment was broken only by the hum of the old refrigerator. A refrigerator that held a half-gallon of milk, a carton of eggs, and a Tupperware of leftover pasta. Beside it, taped to the wall, was a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun. Mommy, Mia, and Sophie. Tessa's gaze drifted to the pile of mail on the table. A bright red disconnection notice from the electric company peeked out from under a pizza flyer. Beside it, the real monster, a pale gray envelope from the hospital's collection agency. The total, $43,582.19, was seared into her brain. It was the cost of her miracles. The price of Mia and Sophie's first 2 months of life, spent in humming plastic boxes, fighting for every breath. Her ex, Kyle, had looked at those incubators like they were cages. He'd looked at the first bill, then at her, and said the only word she'd ever truly remembered him saying, "I'm not cut out for this, Tess." 5 years. 5 years of working double shifts as a nursing assistant, of smelling like antiseptic and cafeteria food. 5 years of her worn-out sneakers squeaking on polished hospital floors, her back aching, her heart aching. 5 years of living in fear of this exact moment, the moment when there was no more robbing Peter to pay Paul. There was just, no. Mommy? A small voice pulled her from the spiral. Tessa straightened up, forcing a bright, wide smile onto her face before turning. Her 7-year-old twins stood in the hallway, identical in their matching fleece pajamas, their blonde hair a wild mess of sleep. Mia clutched a worn-out teddy bear. Sophie rubbed her eyes. "Good morning, my sweet peas," Tessa said, her voice an octave higher than it had been a moment ago. "Who wants oatmeal? Can we go see the lights tonight?" Mia asked, climbing onto a wobbly kitchen chair. "You promised? The big store. With the train." Tessa's smile didn't falter, even as her mind raced. The car's check engine light had come on yesterday. But the lights at Fieldman's department store, that was their one holiday tradition. It was big, it was beautiful, and most importantly, it was free. "You bet," she said, kissing the top of her head. "After I get home from work, we'll go. Now oatmeal it is." The store was a different world. Warm air, smelling of pine and cinnamon, washed over them as they entered. Christmas carols played softly, a river of shoppers flowing past displays of glittering, perfect lives. Mia and Sophie's eyes were wide, their hands clutching Tessa's tightly. "Wow," Sophie whispered, pointing at a massive, sparkling reindeer. "Come on, Bugs, the train is on the 3rd floor, Tessa said, steering them past the glittering jewelry counters and the perfume section that cost more than her rent. She was navigating a minefield. Every display was a potential "I want," another reminder of what she couldn't provide. But they were good. They just looked, their faces pressed against the glass, content to be in the magic. They watched the animated elves in the window, rode the escalator twice, and finally, stood mesmerized by the intricate model train that chugged through a tiny, snow-covered village. Tessa felt her shoulders relax. This was good. This was a perfect free evening. "Okay, my loves," she said after a while. "Time to head home for dinner." "Wait, Mommy, look." Mia suddenly shouted, breaking free and running toward the girls' clothing section. "Sophie, look." Tessa's heart seized. "Mia, honey, we're just looking." But it was too late. Sophie had followed her. There, on a special display, were two dresses. They weren't flashy. They were simple, elegant, and perfect. One in deep emerald, one in ruby red, both made of soft velvet with a tiny, sparkling silver bow at the collar. There for the concert. Sophie breathed, her small hand reaching out to touch the fabric, afraid to smudge it. Mia, we could be the Jingle Bell Rock twins. Everyone else is wearing new dresses, Mia said, her voice quiet, looking up at Tessa with an expression of such pure, desperate hope that it physically hurt. Tessa's smile felt brittle, like a piece of glass about to shatter. She knew these dresses. They were the exact ones the school newsletter had suggested. She walked over, her worn-out nursing shoes feeling heavy and clumsy on the plush carpet. She's fine. It's fine. She'd just look and then gently explain. She flipped the small white tag. $40. Her breath hitched. $40 each. $80 total. Plus tax. Tessa's mind did the math in an instant. $80 was the electric bill. It was the gas to get to work for 3 weeks. It was 2 full carts of groceries stretched thin. It was the $200 she'd just been forced to spend on the car's alternator, a repair that had taken every last cent of her savings. She had exactly $18.41 in her bank account until next Friday. "Oh, sweeties," she started, her voice sounding thin. They are just beautiful. But you know what? I have an idea. We have that red ribbon at home. We could make our own bows for the dresses we already have. It'll be special. Just ours." Mia's face crumpled. "But they won't be velvet." I know, baby." Tessa felt the familiar hot sting of failure. She carefully, her hands trembling, lifted the 2 tiny velvet dresses from their padded hangers and placed them back on the rack. Each one felt like it weighed 100 pounds. That's when the voice cut through the air. "Dad, why is that lady putting the dresses back? Can't she buy them for her little girls?" It wasn't a mean voice. It was a child's voice, clear, high, and brutally honest. The store, which had been a low hum of activity, went utterly silent. The soft Christmas carol seemed to fade. The woman at the next rack, the one in the expensive-looking coat, turned and stared. The teenage cashier paused, her hands hovering over the scanner. Tessa froze. She could feel every eye in the section land on her. On her old coat, her worn-out shoes, her trembling hands. She saw the boy, no older than 6, looking at her with wide, curious eyes. She saw the man beside him, tall, dressed in a dark wool coat that probably cost more than her car. His face was blank, but his eyes, he was looking right at her. A tidal wave of it, crawling up her neck, flooding her face, burning her ears. She couldn't breathe. She was exposed. Just labeled. "Poor Mommy?" Mia whispered, tugging on her coat. That broke the spell. "We're leaving," Tessa choked out. "But the train. Now." She grabbed Mia's hand with one of hers, Sophie's with the other, and she fled. She didn't walk. She ran. She half-dragged her daughters past the reindeer, through the perfume section, their small feet stumbling to keep up. "Mommy, you're hurting my arm." Sophie cried. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Mia's voice was laced with panic. Tessa's cheeks burned, her hands shaking. She felt like the smallest person in the world, all because of an unfair system that keeps hardworking people one broken appliance away from disaster. She burst through the heavy glass doors into the freezing night air, the cold hitting her tear-streaked face like a slap. If you agree that no parent should ever feel this kind of shame, hit that subscribe button. Only people who think poverty is a choice won't. Tessa fumbled for her keys, her hands shaking so violently she could barely fit the key in the car door. She piled the twins into their booster seats, their faces a mask of confusion and fear. She got into the driver's seat and slammed the door. She turned the key. Click, click, click. "Oh no," she whispered, tears blurring the dashboard. No, not now. Please." She tried again. Click, click. On the third try, the engine grudgingly turned over, roaring to life with a shudder. Tessa dropped her forehead against the steering wheel, a single broken sob escaping her chest. In the back seat, Sophie finally asked the question that had been hanging in the air. "Mommy, why was that boy so mean?" Tessa wiped her eyes, her voice raw. "He wasn't mean, sweetie," she whispered, pulling the car into traffic. "He was just honest." Reed Donnelly sat in his penthouse office. The skyline of the city spread out before him like a silent, glittering carpet. It was a view that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime, and for 3 years he hadn't seen it at all. He just looked through it. Since Claire's death, his world had been grayscale. Life was a series of scheduled events, board meetings, and the hollow echo of his own footsteps in the sprawling, sterile apartment. He managed his company with ruthless efficiency and parented his son, Owen, with a kind of detached, checklist-driven affection. He made sure Owen was fed, clothed, and educated, but the part of him that felt, the part Claire had owned, was buried with her. Until last night. The image was seared onto his brain, a splash of unwanted color in his gray world. The woman's face. The way her hand had trembled as she placed those dresses back on the rack. The sudden hot flush of shame that had raced up her neck. The terror in her eyes when his son's voice had cut through the store. And the way she had fled, dragging her daughters as if the store itself were on fire. He'd felt something. It wasn't just pity. It was a sharp, visceral shame. His son, his privilege, his very presence had been the weapon that humiliated her. For the first time in 3 years, the numbness had cracked, and the feeling that rushed in was agonizing. Did I make her sad, Dad? Owen had asked in the car, his small voice breaking the heavy silence. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to know. No, buddy. You didn't do anything wrong, Reed had said, his own voice sounding rusty. Can we find her? Can we get them the dresses and say we're sorry? I don't know who she is, Owen. You can find anyone, Owen said with the simple, unwavering faith of a 6-year-old. You're the boss. Owen was right. He could find anyone. Reed picked up his phone and dialed a number not saved in his main contacts. Gavin, he said, his voice flat, all business. I need you to find someone. A woman, late 20s. 2 twin daughters, around 7. They were at the downtown Fieldman's last night around 7 p.m., girls' clothing department. She has blonde hair, probably 5'5". She drives an older model blue sedan, maybe a Honda, looked like it was in rough shape. I need a name, an address, a full workup. Discretion is paramount. Yes, by tomorrow. He hung up. He told himself he was doing it for Owen, to get the dresses, to apologize. But it was a lie. He was doing it for himself. He needed to scrub that look of raw humiliation from his memory. Gavin delivered as he always did. Less than 24 hours later, a slim, encrypted file landed in Reed's inbox. He opened it. Subject, Tessa Hayes, 28. Address, 412B North 18th Street, Apartment 3B. Employment, Nursing Assistant, Mercy General Hospital, night shift. Dependents, Mia Hayes, 7, Sophie Hayes, 7. Financials, outstanding debt, $43,582.19. Mercy General Collections, Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, 2018. Rent, $1,450 per month, 2 months in arrears. Eviction warning issued 5 days ago. Utilities, $212, pending disconnection. Bank account, $18.41 as of last deposit. Reed read the numbers, and the shame from the store curdled into something colder. This woman wasn't just struggling, she was drowning. The $80 for those dresses wasn't a splurge, it was an impossibility. It was her power bill. He kept reading and his blood ran cold. Personal, father of dependents, Kyle Masters, 30. Subject, Masters abandoned family post-birth. No contact for 5 years. Note, subject, Masters returned to the city approximate 3 weeks ago. Surveillance, requested by landlord Re, unrelated building issue, spotted Masters twice this week in the vicinity of Hayes apartment building. Subject appears to be monitoring her movements. Masters has a history of disorderly conduct and 2 prior restraining orders, previous partners. This changed everything. This wasn't just a woman with money problems. This was a woman in danger. Her pride, so evident in that store, was the only armor she had left. Reed's mind, the one that ran a billion-dollar company, snapped into action. He couldn't just show up with a check. He couldn't be the rich man from the store, rescuing the poor woman. He'd be no better than the people who stared. She would hate him. He would hate himself. He had to fix this, but he had to do it from the shadows. He made 2 calls. The first was to the CFO of Mercy General Hospital, a man who sat on 2 of Reed's charity boards. Arthur, I'm transferring $500,000 to the Employee Assistance Fund, Reed said, cutting off the man's sputtered thanks. It's anonymous from a Shell Foundation. But it has one condition. You're launching a new employee legacy grant immediately. It's for long-serving staff with catastrophic family medical debt. And your first recipient to be notified tomorrow is Tessa Hayes. Her NICU balance is to be zeroed out. Completely. No questions, no press. It's a grant, not a loan. Am I clear? He hung up. That was the easy part. The debt was gone. The second part? That was the problem his money couldn't solve. He couldn't just send a check to fix a man like that. A man who stalks. A man who preys on the mother of his children. Reed looked at the report again. Preferred weekend activity, Central Park, near the playground. A new plan formed, one that was illogical, risky, and entirely unlike him. He couldn't send a bodyguard. He couldn't have Kyle arrested. He hadn't done anything, yet. Reed needed to see her for himself. He needed to know she was safe. But he couldn't go as Reed Donnelly, CO. He couldn't be the man from the store, the man whose wealth had been the spotlight for her humiliation. He closed the file. He knew what he had to do. He would take Owen to the park on Saturday. He'd wear jeans and a baseball cap. He'd just be Reed, a single dad, maybe a guy who worked in tech. It was a deception, he knew that. But he told himself it was a necessary one, a kindness. He was doing it to protect her pride. He ignored the deeper, more unfamiliar truth. He was doing it because he wanted, for the first time in 3 years, to meet someone. He wanted to see if the woman with the fierce, broken pride was as real as the feeling she'd woken up inside him. A week can change everything. A week ago, the air in Central Park had been just as crisp, the November sun just as weak, but Tessa had been a ghost walking through it. Today she was breathing it in. The phone call from the hospital administrator had felt like a prank. A hospital employee legacy grant, he'd said. An anonymous donation from a new foundation. Her entire, suffocating $43,000 balance, erased. Just like that. She'd spent 3 days waiting for the other shoe to drop, checking her bank account for a clerical error, expecting another call saying it was all a mistake. But the paid-in-full notice that arrived in the mail was real. The weightlessness was disorienting. For the first time in 7 years, she wasn't mentally calculating every penny. She'd bought the good brand of coffee. She'd paid the electric bill and the water bill on the same day. And now, on her day off, she'd brought Mia and Sophie to the big park, not because it was free but simply because it was beautiful. She watched her daughters, their cheeks pink from the cold, chasing each other around a massive oak tree. Their laughter was different too. Kids sense everything. They sensed the dark cloud over their mother's head had finally, miraculously lifted. "Don't go too far," she called, settling onto a bench. She felt, the fear of Kyle still lurked in the back of her mind, a low-level hum, but the grant had given her a sense of power. She wasn't trapped anymore. She could breathe. At the other end of the grassy expanse, Reed Donnelly watched her. He felt anything but calm. His heart was hammering against his ribs. He'd swapped his tailored wool coat for a faded university hoodie and jeans. His driver was parked 3 blocks away. This was, by every metric he lived by, insane. "Now, Dad?" Owen whispered, bouncing a red soccer ball at his feet. Reed looked at Tessa, sitting alone on the bench, a small, hopeful smile on her face as she watched her twins. He timed this, researched it. He knew she came here after her Saturday morning shift. But seeing her in person, not as a fleeing, humiliated figure, but as a young woman, she was beautiful. "Okay, buddy," Reed said, his voice a little tight. "Remember what we talked about. Not too hard. Just a roll." I know," Owen said, excited by this secret mission. He lined up the shot and, with all the focus a 6-year-old could muster, kicked the ball. It was a perfect, gentle roll, arcing across the grass, coming to a stop directly at the feet of a shrieking Mia. Mia stopped, surprised, and picked up the ball. She looked around, and Sophie pointed toward Reed and Owen. "Showtime," Reed muttered to himself. He took a breath and jogged over, forcing a casual, slightly winded pace. "Oh man, sorry about that," he called out, his voice sounding unnatural to his own ears. "Owen, that's what happens when you're not paying attention." Owen, a natural actor, ran up beside him. "It slipped, Dad. Sorry." Tessa stood up from the bench, her guard instinctively up, but her face relaxed when she just saw a dad and his son. "It's okay," she said, smiling. "No harm done. Right, girls?" "It's a cool ball," Mia said, holding it out. "Wanna play?" Owen asked, vibrating with energy. "We can be on a team." "Can we, Mom? Please?" Sophie chimed in. Tessa looked at Reed, a silent, parental, "Is this okay?" check. "He could certainly use the practice," Reed said, his voice finally settling. He gave her a small, self-deprecating smile. "I'm not the most athletic dad." Tessa laughed. It was a real light laugh, and it hit Reed with the force of a physical blow. "I think you're outnumbered. Go on, girls. Be nice." The three kids were off in an instant, a chaotic tangle of small limbs, their shrieks echoing in the cold air. Reed and Tessa were left standing near the bench, an awkward, familiar silence stretching between them. They sure have a lot of energy," Reed said, jamming his hands into his hoodie pocket. He felt like he was 16. "You have no idea," Tessa replied, her eyes on her daughters. "That's Mia in the pink. She's the boss. Sophie is the one trying to pull her hair. She's the instigator. He's the negotiator," Reed said, nodding toward Owen. "Tries to logic his way out of bedtime." She laughed again. "I'm Tessa, by the way." "Reed," he said, offering a hand. It was a reflex, the CEO's greeting, and he quickly tried to make it more casual. Her hand was small and cool in his. "That's Owen, as you've probably gathered." "Twins, huh?" he asked, leaning against the tree. "Wow, that's a handful, I'd imagine." "That's the polite word for it," Tessa said. "But it's double the good stuff, too." She found herself talking easily to him. He wasn't staring at her, wasn't sizing her up. He was just a guy in a park. "It's hard sometimes. You know, just me and the girls." She trailed off, bracing. This was the moment. The just me part. The part where the man's eyes would do a quick inventory, calculate the baggage, and politely disengage. Reed just nodded. His expression didn't change except to soften with something that looked like understanding. "Yeah," he said, his voice quiet. "It's just me and Owen, too." Tessa's polite smile wavered. "Oh. His mom? Reed looked down, scuffing his sneaker on a root. "She passed away 3 years ago." It was the truth, but it felt different in this new context. It felt like a bridge. Instantly, the dynamic shifted. He wasn't a potential threat or a stranger. He was her. He was a single parent, navigating the same impossible world, just from the other side. "Oh, Reed," Tessa said, her hand flying to her chest. "I'm so sorry. I can't even imagine." "It is what it is," he said with a small shrug. "Some days are better than others. But he's a great kid." He looked back at her, his gaze direct and warm. "Looks like you're doing an amazing job with your girls. They seem really happy. Really bright." Tessa felt a sudden, sharp sting behind her eyes. It wasn't pity in his voice. It was respect. It was the first time in so long a man had looked at her life and not seen a burden, but a success. The kids came stampeding back, red-faced and panting. "Dad, can Mia and Sophie come to our house? We can play Lego Star Wars. Please? And we can show him our drawings." Mia added. Tessa laughed, flustered. "Oh, I don't think we can do that today, Bugs." "Well, maybe not today," Reed interjected smoothly, saving her. "But hey, Owen's been nonstop about making new friends. And they all seem to really get along." He rubbed the back of his neck, looking genuinely hesitant. "This might be forward, but maybe we could exchange numbers? We could meet here again. For a real playdate. If you're comfortable with that, I mean." Tessa looked at him. He seemed kind. A little sad maybe. But normal. Safe. And Owen was a sweet kid. Her girls were already hanging on him, chattering about the game. "I'd like that," she said, a real smile spreading across her face. The girls they'd love that. They fumbled for their phones, that slightly awkward modern-day ritual. He texted her Reed, so she'd have his number. She texted back Tessa. "Well," he said, zipping up Owen's jacket. "We should probably get going. Big day of errands." "Us too," Tessa said, grabbing her twins' hands. "Come on, my loves. Say bye to Owen and Reed." "Bye, Reed," the girls chimed in unison. "Bye, Tessa. Bye, Mia. Bye, Sophie." As Tessa walked her daughters back toward their apartment, she felt a lightness in her chest that had nothing to do with the paid-off debt. The world looked sharper, the colors brighter. She'd spent 5 years so terrified of men, so certain she was a package deal of debt and responsibility that no one would ever look at twice. But Reed had looked. And he'd smiled. And he'd understood. A few blocks away, Reed got into the back of his black sedan. His driver didn't say a word. Reed stared out the window, a strange, forgotten sensation bubbling up inside him. His heart was beating fast. He'd liked her laugh. He'd liked the way she'd stood up for herself without being defensive. He'd liked the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her kids. He felt alive. The lie, he told himself, was a small, white one. A necessary door to open. He'd tell her the truth. Eventually. But for now, he just wanted to feel this. He just wanted to see her again. December settled over the city, blanketing it in an early, biting chill. But inside Tessa's small apartment, something warm had taken root. The past month had been a quiet, gentle unfolding. Dating was almost too formal a word for what she and Reed were doing. It was building. It was Reed showing up on a Tuesday night with a pizza, not from some gourmet wood-fired place, but from the corner spot the twins loved, and a rented kids' movie. It was him sitting patiently at her wobbly kitchen table, his brow furrowed in concentration as he helped Mia sound out the words in her reading homework, while Owen and Sophie built an elaborate pillow and blanket fortress in the living room. It was Tessa, for the first time, cooking for a man without feeling like she was being judged. She'd make her simple, budget-friendly spaghetti, and he'd eat 2 full plates, telling her with genuine sincerity that it was the best he'd had in years. He'd listen, really listen, when she talked about the mundane frustrations of her day at the hospital. He didn't try to fix anything. He just listened. He was a natural father. The twins, starved for positive male attention, had cautiously, then completely, adopted him. Mia, the bossy one, would climb into his lap to read him her stories. Sophie, the quiet observer, would just sit near him, drawing, content to be in his orbit. And Owen was transformed. The quiet, solemn boy Reed had described was gone, replaced by a loud, laughing 6-year-old who adored being the big brother to his new sisters. For Tessa, it was a terrifying, exhilarating freefall. Every instinct, scarred by Kyle, screamed at her to keep her walls up. But Reed never pushed. He was patient. He was gentle. He was present. She found herself trusting him. She found herself happy. For Reed, this tiny, cluttered apartment had become a sanctuary. It was more of a home than his sprawling, silent penthouse had ever been. He was careful, almost paranoid, about maintaining his cover. He drove his modest sedan, a 5-year-old Audi that he prayed didn't look too expensive. He paid for pizza in cash. He wore the same rotation of jeans and sweaters. He told himself he was protecting her from the complication of his wealth, but he knew deep down he was protecting this fragile, real thing. He was just Reed, the tech guy, the single dad. And for the first time since Claire died, Reed was enough. He was falling in love. The illusion shattered on a Thursday night. Tessa's shift had been brutal. A 12-hour-long cascade of emergencies and demanding patience. She was exhausted, her feet throbbing, her mind already on a hot bath and the kiss Reed had promised to give her when he came by to say goodnight. She trudged up the dimly lit stairs to her apartment, fumbling in her purse for her keys. A figure stepped out from the shadowed alcove at the end of the hall, blocking her path. The smell hit her first. Stale cigarettes, unwashed clothes, and the sickly sweet rot of cheap whiskey. Her blood turned to ice. She didn't even need to see his face. "Hello, Tess," he said. "Kyle," she breathed, her hand flying to her throat. Her keys clattered to the floor. He stooped to pick them up, his movements fluid like a predator. He was thinner than she remembered, his face hollowed out, but his eyes were the same, sharp, calculating, and dead. He dangled her keys in front of her face. "Been a while," he smirked, his gaze drifting down her body, lingering on her nursing scrubs. "Look at you. Still playing the saint. What do you want, Kyle?" Tessa demanded, snatching the keys from him. Her voice was shaking, but she refused to show him fear. "You're not supposed to be here." "Not supposed to be where?" "In my hometown. Visiting the mother of my children?" He leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. He was blocking her door. "I hear things, Tess. Hear you're doing well. Got that big debt, just handled." Tessa's heart hammered. "How did you know about that?" "I got my ways. And I see you got a new friend. A fancy one." His eyes glittered. "Saw him dropping you off. Nice car. Way nicer than that piece of junk I used to drive. He buy you that?" He the one who paid off your bills. Kyle's sneer made Tessa's stomach turn. He was the worst kind of manipulator, using threats to control her. We all know someone like Kyle. If you can't stand bullies who prey on people they think are weaker, smash that like button. Only people who side with the bully would ignore this. That's none of your business, Tessa said, trying to push past him. Get out of my way. He grabbed her arm. His grip was like a steel trap. I think it is my business. See, I'm in a bit of a jam. And it looks like you've come into some money. Or at least you're sleeping with it. So I need a loan. Just to get back on my feet. I don't have any money, Kyle. Let go of me. I think you'll find it, he hissed, his face inches from hers. The smell of whiskey was suffocating. I need $5,000. By Monday. 5,000. Tessa laughed, a broken, hysterical sound. Are you insane? I'm a nursing assistant. I don't have $500. But he does. Your new man. Reed. Tessa went rigid. You stay away from him. You stay away from my kids. Oh, I'll stay away. As long as I get my money. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, his eyes gleaming with malice. Because if I don't, I'm gonna have to have a little chat with him. Tell him all about us. All about what you're really like. The things you had to do to get by after I left. All those extra shifts at that diner down on 4th Street. Bet he doesn't know about that. Bet your rich, clean-cut Mr. Project Manager doesn't like his girls used. 5,000 or he finds out, Kyle whispered, enjoying her fear. This kind of toxic manipulation can destroy lives. If you believe Tessa deserves to be free from this creep, comment, I stand with Tessa below. Let's see who's really on her side. The blood drained from Tessa's face. It wasn't a secret. It was a nightmare. She'd worked for 2 months at a 24-hour diner where the tips were good but the customers were handsy, a job she'd quit the second she got the call from the hospital. It was nothing sordid, nothing she was ashamed of. But the way Kyle said it, he'd twist it. He'd make her sound dirty, unstable, a bad mother. That was her terror. Not of her past, but of Kyle's version of it. She was terrified of him breathing his poison into the clean, safe world she was building with Reed. She was terrified of Reed looking at her with doubt. She was terrified of this good, gentle man seeing the violence and chaos of her past and deciding, just like Kyle had, that she wasn't worth the trouble. Kyle saw the terror in her eyes and his sneer widened. He'd won. He leaned back, releasing her arm. Monday, Tess. By the fountain in the park. No. Don't be late. He brushed past her, his shoulder intentionally knocking hers, and sauntered down the stairs, whistling softly. Tessa stood frozen for a full minute, her back pressed against the wall. Then, her hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries, she unlocked her apartment door, stumbled inside and slammed the deadbolt. She slid to the floor, her scrub-covered knees pulled to her chest. The small, warm apartment suddenly felt cold. The life she was building had been invaded. The past she'd fought so hard to escape was standing on her doorstep, and it had a price tag. She couldn't tell Reed. She couldn't. He would see the drama, the ex, the mess. He would run. She was alone. Again. The weekend was a special kind of torture. Monday loomed, a black hole of a deadline. Kyle's $5,000 demand was an impossibility, and his threat hung in the air of Tessa's apartment like a toxic gas. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. Every time her phone buzzed, she jumped, her heart leaping into her throat. She snapped at Mia for spilling juice. She barely heard Sophie read a full page of her new book. She felt disconnected, a ghost in her own life, haunted by the past she couldn't escape and the future she was about to lose. Reed knew something was wrong. He wasn't a fool. He'd come over on Sunday ostensibly to help the kids build a monster-proof Lego castle, but really to check on her. He watched as she paced the small kitchen, staring at her phone, her knuckles white. "Tess, talk to me," he said, his voice low and gentle, as the kids shrieked with laughter in the living room. "You're a million miles away. You've been vibrating with anxiety all weekend. Is it work? Is it your ex?" He'd seen a man fitting Kyle's description from the PI report lingering near her building a few days ago, but he hadn't wanted to alarm her. Now he was connecting the dots. Tessa's head snapped up. "What? No. Why would you? It's not him. It's just bills. The car repair set me back and the holidays are coming. It's just money, Reed. It's always money." She lied. It was a partial truth. wrapped in a lie of omission. How could she tell him? "Hi, Reed, my violent, manipulative ex is back, and he's trying to blackmail me using a part of my past I'm ashamed of. He thinks you're my rich savior." She could see the look on his face already, pity then distance. He was a good, stable man. He didn't need this mess. She wouldn't be the anchor that dragged him down. Reed studied her face. He saw the flicker of panic in her eyes when she said, "Money." He saw her glance at the stack of bills on her counter. He remembered the PI report. He put the pieces together, but he assembled them into the wrong picture. He thought he understood. Kyle was back, harassing her for money. She was too proud, too strong to tell him, too ashamed to ask for help. She was trying to carry this impossible financial burden all by herself. A surge of fierce, protective anger rolled through him. He wanted to find Kyle and break him. But more than that, he wanted to take this crushing weight off her shoulders. He wanted to fix it. He wanted her to be able to breathe. If money was the problem, he was the one man on earth who could make it disappear. He left her apartment that night with a gentle kiss on her worried forehead and a calm, clear-eyed resolution. He got into his sedan, drove 3 blocks away to where his real car was parked, and got into the back of the Maybach. "Get me David Shin on the line," he said to his driver. A moment later, the hospital CEO's voice came through the speaker, slick and overly friendly. "Reed, what a pleasure. I was just reviewing the seating chart for the gala. You're going to be front and center." "Cut the pleasantries, David," Reed said, his voice pure ice. "You have a problem in your nursing department." I do. You have a nursing assistant named Tessa Hayes. She's been with you for 5 years. She's a single mother, works nights, and she's burning out. I want her moved." The line was silent for a beat. "Reed, I'm not sure I understand. Our staffing protocols, the union?" "This isn't a request, David. This is a condition of my continued patronage," Reed said flatly. "Donovan Enterprises is responsible for, 12% of your operating budget this year? The Claire Donnelly Pediatric Wing? It's time for a little gratitude. I want Miss Hayes promoted. I want an administrative role. I want it 9 to 5, salaried, and I want a 30% pay bump. Effective immediately." "Reed, I can't just invent a position." "That's not. Then invent one. Call it Senior Patient Coordinator. Call it Head of Sunshine. I don't care what the title is. I care that it's done. By tomorrow morning. Consider it a personal investment in your staff's well-being. Am I clear?" "Crystal, Reed. Crystal. Oh, I'll find a way." Reed hung up, a bitter taste in his mouth. He hated this. Hated using his name, his money like a hammer. It was everything he'd sworn he wouldn't do. But what was the alternative? Watch Tessa crumble under the weight of a stress he could eliminate with a single phone call? He justified it. She deserves this. She works harder than anyone in that building. This isn't a handout, it's a correction. This will give her the breathing room she needs. This will solve her problem. The next morning was Monday. Kyle's deadline. Tessa felt sick. She'd been throwing up since 5 a.m. She had $40 to her name. Noon felt like an execution. She was in the hospital break room, her head in her hands, trying to game out her options. There were none. Her phone rang. Director's office. Her blood ran cold. "Oh God, I'm being fired." She walked to the administrative wing on shaking legs, her mind racing. Was it my distraction? Did I make a mistake? She was ushered into the head of nursing's office. Miss Petrova, a woman Tessa had only ever seen scowling, was smiling. "Miss Hayes, please sit." Petrova looked down at a file, then back up at Tessa. "Tessa, your work here, it has not gone unnoticed. We know how hard you've worked, how dedicated you are." Tessa just stared, confused. "An opportunity has come up and your name was put forward by high-level administration. As an exemplary employee. A new position has been created. Senior Patient Coordinator. It's an administrative role. 9 to 5. Full benefits." Petrova slid a letter across the desk. "And the starting salary is $62,000 a year." Tessa looked at the number. She looked at Miss Petrova. She looked back at the number. $62,000? She whispered. It was almost double what she made. It was a different life. I don't understand," she stammered. "I didn't apply for anything. It's a special appointment, based on your floor experience and exemplary record. They wanted someone who knows the system from the inside out. It's yours, Tessa. If you want it. Tessa burst into tears. Not the terrified, anxious tears of the last 72 hours. These were tears of pure, unadulterated shock and joy. She had done it. After 5 years of backbreaking work, of being overlooked, of cleaning up messes and holding hands and being invisible, they had seen her. She wasn't just a single mom. She wasn't a charity case. She was a senior coordinator. She had earned this. The joy was so profound, so powerful, it was like a suit of armor clicking into place around her. It was pride. It was worth. She stumbled out of the office, clutching the offer letter. She looked at the clock on the wall. 11:47 a.m. A new feeling, cold and sharp, cut through the joy. Fury. Kyle was waiting for her. He was waiting for the scared, broken woman with no options. He was about to be very, very disappointed. She didn't run. She strode out of the hospital, across the street and into the park. He was there by the fountain, a smug look on his face. Well, look who it is, he sneered, dropping a cigarette. Got my money, Tess? Tessa stopped 3 feet from him. Her back was straight. Her chin was up. Her eyes were clear and cold. No. Kyle's smirk faltered, turning into a scowl. Wrong answer. I guess your new boyfriend is about to get a very interesting. You guess wrong, Tessa said, her voice like steel. You're not going to talk to him. You're not going to come near me. And you are never going to see me or my daughters again. He laughed, but it was nervous. Oh yeah. And who's gonna stop me? You. Yes. Me. She took a step closer and he flinched. I just got a promotion, Kyle. A big one. I'm not the same broke, scared girl you left holding the bills. I'm a senior patient coordinator at Mercy General. And if you so much as breathe in my direction, I will use every dollar of my new salary to get a restraining order that will make your head spin. I will take you to court for back child support. I will bury you in the system you're so good at hiding from. You think you're a threat? You're nothing. You're just a ghost. Get out of my life. Kyle stared at her. This was not the Tessa he knew. The terror he'd counted on was gone, replaced by a terrifying, icy confidence. He searched her face for a bluff and found none. He took a step back. Whatever, Tess. You're still trash, he spat, trying to get the last word. And you're still gone. She turned her back on him, a final, definitive act, and walked away, never once looking back. She was flying. That night, she was vibrating with adrenaline and happiness when Reed came over. She threw her arms around him, kissing him hard. Reed? Oh my God, you won't believe it. I got a promotion. A real one. Reed forced a look of stunned delight. Tess. What? That's incredible. Tell me everything. He listened, his heart sinking and soaring at the same time as she recounted the story, her face glowing with a pride he had never seen. They saw me, Reed. They said my performance was noted. Me. After all this time. I earned this. He hugged her tightly, burying his face in her hair. You deserve every bit of it, he whispered, his voice thick. I am so proud of you. He held her, the lie a heavy, leaden weight in his chest. He had wanted to give her peace. Instead, he had given her a false victory. He watched her dance around the kitchen with her daughters, celebrating her own success. And he knew in that gut-wrenching moment he could never tell her. He had solved her problem, but he had just created an even bigger one. Kyle sat in his rusted-out Civic, the engine ticking as it cooled. He hadn't moved in an hour, just staring at the empty spot where Tessa's cheap, dented sedan was usually parked. He was supposed to be gone, defeated. He had been for about 5 minutes. But as he'd slunk away from the park, Tessa's icy confidence had begun to curdle in his gut, transforming from humiliation into a white-hot, narcissistic rage. She hadn't just said no. She had dismissed him. She'd looked at him like he was the trash. He'd spent the last 24 hours stewing in a whiskey-fueled haze. She thought she was so smart. A senior patient coordinator. He spat the words. She'd been nothing when he was with her. Nothing. This new guy, this Reed, had made her strong. And for that, Kyle hated them both. He wasn't going to be dismissed. He just needed new leverage. He parked across the street from Mercy General, the fifth of whiskey on his passenger seat half empty. He knew her new hours. 5 p.m. He'd wait. He'd make a scene. He'd follow her, yell at her. He'd show her new coworkers what she was really about. He'd pull her back down. At 5:03 p.m., the main doors opened and she walked out. But it wasn't the Tessa he recognized. Gone were the shapeless scrubs and the worn-out sneakers, the hair pulled back in a messy, functional bun. This Tessa wore a smart wool coat he'd never seen before, dark jeans and boots with a heel. Her hair was down, bouncing on her shoulders. She was glowing. She was laughing at something on her phone. The sight of her, so confident, so happy, was like a punch to his ego. A moment later, a sleek, dark gray Audi sedan pulled up to the curb. Not a cheap car, Kyle noted. He slouched down as Reed got out of the driver's side, walked around and opened the passenger door for her. He opened the door. He kissed her, a quick, familiar peck before getting back in. Kyle's knuckles turned white on his steering wheel. "Mr. Project Manager," he sneered. He started his engine. "Let's see where the happy couple goes." He hung back, his broken muffler an ugly rumble in the evening traffic. He expected them to go to her rundown apartment. They didn't. He expected a mid-level restaurant, maybe an Olive Garden. They didn't. Reed's Audi drove straight through the center of the city, past the trendy restaurants, past the theater district, and into the wealthiest, most exclusive zip code in the state. Kyle's brow furrowed. Where the hell is he going? The Audi slowed, signaling. It turned not into a driveway but toward a gleaming glass and steel skyscraper that stabbed at the sky. The Olympus, Kyle read, spelled out in minimalist gold letters. He watched, his jaw slack, as the security gate rolled open and the Audi disappeared into a private underground garage. Kyle pulled over, his mind racing, the whiskey forgotten. He'd been a valet for 6 months. He knew this building. This wasn't a project manager building. This was a master of the universe building. He pulled out his cracked smartphone, his fingers fumbling. He typed in the Olympus, Baltimore. He didn't even have to look hard. The first news hit was from a society blog. The Olympus penthouse smashes records. Donnelly Enterprises CEO snatches up. Kyle's breath hitched. He clicked the link. His world tilted. There, on his screen, was a professional headshot. The same man. The same eyes. The same half-smile. But the caption wasn't Reed, the tech guy. It was Reed Donnelly, CEO and founder of Donnelly Enterprises. A man whose name was plastered on half the city's cultural institutions. The man whose company literally funded the new pediatric wing at Mercy General. The pieces clicked into place with the force of a detonation. The grant. The magical, anonymous grant for $43,000. The promotion. The sudden, high-level job she hadn't even applied for. The lie. "You stupid, stupid." Kyle whispered, but he was grinning. A slow, venomous grin that split his face. This wasn't a setback. This was the lottery. This was the jackpot. Reed Donnelly, billionaire, was slumming it with his ex, playing house and lying to her face. He was so desperate to keep his little project that he'd built her a fantasy life. And Tessa, poor, stupid Tessa, had believed every word. This wasn't about $5,000 anymore. This was about everything. Kyle's fingers flew across his screen. He saw the hospital's website was heavily advertising its annual fundraising gala. This Friday. Perfect. He screenshotted Reed's corporate photo. He opened a new text message. He knew her number by heart. He typed, savoring every single toxic word. Tessa was humming. She stood in a kitchen so large it could fit her entire apartment twice. Soft jazz played from invisible speakers. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights twinkled like a carpet of fallen stars. Mia, Sophie, and Owen were in the media room, their giggles echoing down the hall. Reed was at the massive steel stove, attempting to pan-sear scallops, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm telling you, the recipe said high heat," he said, laughing as one of them skittered away from his spatula. "High heat, not an inferno, Mr. Project Manager," she teased, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "It's okay. We can order pizza." "Never," he said, turning in her arms to kiss her. "I will conquer the scallop." She laughed, her head resting on his chest, feeling a sense of peace so profound it almost scared her. It was perfect. He was perfect. Her phone buzzed on the cool marble island. She let go of him, still smiling, and went to check it, assuming it was her friend from work. It was an unknown number. Her smile faded. She opened the message. First, the image. A corporate headshot of Reed. His hair was slicked back. He was in an expensive suit. He looked powerful and cold and like a total stranger. Under it the caption, "Reed Donnelly, CEO and founder, Donnelly Enterprises." Then the text, "Your new man is a liar. He's been playing you for a fool. He's not a project manager, Tess. He's a billionaire. The guy who owns the hospital you work at. That grant? That promotion? It wasn't your hard work. It was him. You're his little charity project. I want $50,000. Or I'll be at that fancy hospital gala on Friday to tell everyone in this city how the billionaire's little pet got her job. Hope you look good on the news." Tessa's phone dropped from her hand. It hit the Italian marble floor with a sickening clack. The sound of the jazz, the smell of the searing scallops, the distant laughter of the children, it all faded into a deafening, rushing white noise. A lie. A lie. It was all a lie. Her promotion. Her worth. Her confidence. The pride she'd felt when she'd faced Kyle, it was all a gift. A handout. A game. Tess. Reed's voice came from far away. "Honey, you okay? You look like you just saw a ghost." She couldn't speak. She stared at the phone as the screen glowed on the floor, illuminating her reflection. The woman staring back was the same fool from the department store. Tess. Reed's voice was a distant echo, pulling her back from the roaring static that filled her head. "Tess, you dropped your phone. Honey, you okay? You look like you just saw a ghost." Tessa's eyes slowly refocused on his face. His lying face. He was looking at her with such concern. The hypocrisy was so profound, so complete, it was nauseating. She bent down, her movements stiff, robotic, and picked up the phone. Kyle's message was still glowing on the screen. She clicked it off. "Tessa, what is it?" "You're scaring me." She had to lie. The irony was acidic. She had to lie to the liar to protect him from the blackmailer. She was trapped, a pawn in a game between two men who saw her as something to be controlled. "It's just a migraine," she managed, the word tasting like ash. I think I just need to lie down." She brushed past him, her shoulder hitting his, and locked herself in the opulent marble bathroom. She leaned against the cold, heavy door, her breath coming in ragged, silent sobs. It was all a lie. Her pride. Her earned promotion. Her confidence. The strength she'd felt when she'd faced Kyle in the park, it was all a fraud manufactured for her by a billionaire playing God. He hadn't just paid her debt. He had curated her life. He had pulled the strings on her promotion, the single greatest professional achievement she'd ever had. She wasn't an exemplary employee. She was his pet project. She felt dirty. She felt like the fool from the department store all over again, but this time, the humiliation was infinitely deeper. This time, she had let the man who'd witnessed her shame into her heart. She was trapped. 48 hours until the gala. She couldn't tell Reed. The second she admitted Kyle was blackmailing her, she would confirm all his worst fears about her. She'd be the mess with the violent ex. He'd see her finally as the liability she was. And worse, he'd fix it. He'd throw his money at Kyle and she would be, indisputably, the woman who was bought and paid for. And she couldn't pay Kyle. She didn't have $50,000. She didn't have $500. She was paralyzed. For 2 days she was a zombie, a ghost in the beautiful life she'd been pretending to live. She went through the motions for the kids, faking smiles until her face ached. She told Reed the migraine was lingering, that the fluorescent lights at work were killers. He bought it. He was kind and gentle and so understanding. It made her want to scream. On Thursday night he came over to her apartment. He'd brought takeout, his usual, "I'm just a regular guy" move. "Hey," he said softly, rubbing her shoulders. "I know you've been feeling awful and you're still stressed about money, but I have an idea. A real night out. Just for us." Tessa went still. "What kind of night out?" "The hospital gala is tomorrow," he said, his voice bright. It's a work thing for me. My company's a sponsor, so I have a table." He smiled, that easy, gentle smile that had made her trust him. "I want you to come with me. I want to show you off. You deserve a night where you feel like a queen. Get dressed up. No kids. Just us." Her blood ran cold. The gala. The very one Kyle had threatened. She couldn't breathe. This was it. The trap was set, and she was being asked to walk right into it, on the arm of the man who'd set the bait. If she said no, Kyle would assume she couldn't stop Reed. He'd show up anyway. He'd make a scene. If she said yes, she was walking into her own execution. I don't know, Reed, she whispered. A gala? That's not really my scene. It's not mine either, he lied smoothly. But it'll be fun. For one night, let's just pretend we're the kind of people who go to galas. Please, Tess? For me? She looked at him. Her only chance, her only hope, was to get to Kyle first. To find him in that crowd, to what? Beg? Plead? She had no idea. But she couldn't let him get to Reed. Okay, she said, her voice hollow. Okay, Reed. I'll go. The next night, Tessa stood in front of the mirror in her small bedroom. Hanging on the door was the dress. She'd bought it last week with the first check from her promotion. A simple, elegant, floor-length black gown. It had cost $200, the most she'd ever spent on a piece of clothing, and she had felt like a movie star. Now it looked like a shroud. A liar's uniform. Blood money. She put it on. She did her hair. She put on the simple pearl earrings Reed had given her, just a little something. She looked beautiful, and she had never hated her own reflection more. She wasn't Tessa Hayes. She was a doll, dressed up by her benefactor. Reed Donnelly's little charity project. The drive over was torture. Reed was in a tuxedo looking impossibly handsome. He was relaxed, excited, one hand on the wheel, the other holding hers. He chattered about the hospital, about how proud he was of the work they did. Tessa just nodded, her eyes scanning every car, every pedestrian, every shadow they passed. Her heart was a cold, hard knot in her stomach. She was a soldier in a war zone everyone else thought was a party. The gala was held in the grand ballroom of the city's most expensive hotel. A river of tuxedos and designer gowns flowed up the marble steps. The air was thick with the sound of a string quartet and expensive perfume. Tessa felt like she was walking in on another planet. A planet built by and for men like Reed. Nervous? He whispered, squeezing her hand as they walked in. Terrified, she whispered back. It was the only truth she'd told him in days. He chuckled. Don't be. You're the most beautiful woman in the room. Let's get some champagne. She let him lead her through the crowd. Every face was a potential threat. Every man in a waiter's uniform, every person standing by an exit. Is that him? Is that Kyle? Every face in the crowd looked like a threat. Tessa felt sick, trapped by Kyle's blackmail and Reed's lies. This is the ultimate toxic trap. If you're sick of seeing manipulators and liars win, comment, Tessa deserves the truth. Only people who support this kind of toxic behavior will stay silent. They found their table right at the front. Table 1. Her name was on a small, elegant card. Miss Tessa Hayes. She wondered what fake title was under it. I'm just going to use the restroom, she said, pulling her hand from his. I'll be right back. She didn't go to the restroom. She began to circle the room, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She scanned the bar. She checked the lobby. She peered into the hallways. No sign of Kyle. Maybe he'd been bluffing. Maybe he wouldn't show. A tiny, fragile spark of hope flickered. She returned to the table just as the lights dimmed. Reed smiled and pulled out her chair. You okay? Fine, she lied. The spotlight hit the stage. The hospital's CEO, David Chin, the man who had given her the grant notice, walked up to the podium, beaming. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Tessa barely listened. She clutched her small purse in her lap, her leg bouncing under the table. She was still scanning the exits. And we have so many people to thank for the incredible success of our new pediatric wing, Chin was saying. But there is one man, one company, whose vision and generosity stand above all. A man who believes in giving back to the city that gave him his start. Reed shifted beside her, looking down at his program, modest. Tessa's blood went cold. Oh God, it's happening. He doesn't just write checks, Chin continued, his voice booming. He invests in people. In fact, his latest anonymous donation is the entire reason we were able to launch our new Employee Legacy Grant, a program that helps our own staff who are struggling with medical debt. Tessa's vision narrowed. The room began to tilt. He'd probably be angry I'm telling you that, but true generosity deserves recognition. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a massive round of applause for our biggest benefactor, the chairman of our board and the CEO of Donnelly Enterprises, Mr. Reed Donnelly. The ballroom erupted in applause. The spotlight swung from the stage across table 1, and landed directly on the man beside her. Her Reed. Tessa stopped breathing. It wasn't a shock. It was a confirmation. A cold, dead, final confirmation. Reed squeezed her hand under the table, stood up, and buttoned his tuxedo jacket. He smiled at her, a quick, "Can you believe this?" kind of smile, as if this were all just a silly formality. Then he walked onto the stage, shaking David Chen's hand, a different man entirely. Confident. Powerful. In charge. He was a stranger. He gave a brief, eloquent speech. He was charming. He was humble. He talked about his late wife, Claire. He talked about the importance of community. He thanked the unsung heroes of the hospital staff, the nurses and assistants. Tessa felt like she was going to be sick. When he finished, the room gave him a standing ovation. He walked off the stage, his face beaming, and made a beeline, not for the politicians or the other donors, but straight for her. He sat down, the applause still echoing, and took her hand. "Phew. Glad that's over," he said with a low laugh. "So, what did you think?" Tessa turned her head and looked at him. Really looked at him. The sound in the room faded to a dull roar. The man she loved, the man she'd cooked for, the man she trusted with her children, was a complete fabrication. Her voice, when it came, was unrecognizable. It was a flat, dead whisper. "It was all you." Reed's smile faltered. What do you mean?" "The dresses," she said, her voice impossibly cold. "From the department store. You sent them, didn't you?" "Anonymously. 2 days after we met. I thought it was a clerical error." His face went pale. "Tessa, the grant. The $43,000. That was you. It wasn't a question. The promotion. The job I earned." She laughed, a broken, terrifying sound. "That was you too. Wasn't it, David Chen's high-level administration?" "Tessa, please," he said, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper, grabbing her arm. "Let me explain. I did it for—" "Was any of it real?" she demanded, her eyes locked on his. "Was one single second of the last 2 months real? Or was I just your hobby? Your little, unsung hero project?" Well, looks like the happy couple is complicated." The voice was like gravel and whiskey. It came from right behind Reed. Tessa's heart stopped. Reed turned, confused. Kyle stood there. He wasn't in a tux. He was in a cheap, shiny black suit, his hair slicked back. He was smiling, his eyes glittering with malicious, triumphant glee. "Tessa," Reed said, his voice low, his body tensing. He stood up, placing himself between her and Kyle. "Who is this?" "Ask her," Kyle sneered, enjoying the spotlight. "She didn't tell you about me?" "Oh, Tess, you didn't tell him?" "I'm Kyle. The other man in her life. The one she was supposed to meet today for a financial transaction." "Get away from her," Reed said, his voice a low growl. He was no longer Reed, the tech guy. This was the CO. "Why?" Kyle's smile widened, playing to the nearby tables who were now watching, silent. "You're the one who's been lying. Mr. Project Manager. Tell me, Mr. CEO, how much did she cost? How much for the promotion? Did that $43,000 grant cover everything? Or was that just a down payment?" Reed's face was ashen. He finally understood. The blackmail. His lie. Her silence. It all collided in one catastrophic public explosion. "Tessa," he choked out, turning to her, his eyes desperate. "I can explain." He's twisting. But Tessa was already standing. She looked at Kyle, the overt, rotting poison. Then she looked at Reed, the gilded, subtle, and far more dangerous poison. They were just 2 different kinds of liars. 2 different kinds of control. She looked Reed dead in the eye, her voice suddenly clear and carrying in the new, shocked silence of the ballroom. "You didn't save me, Reed," she said, her words slicing through the air. "You just built a prettier cage." She turned, her back straight, and walked. She didn't run, not this time. She walked, with every ounce of her stolen dignity, past the staring faces, past the whispering donors, and out of the grand ballroom, leaving Reed Donnelly frozen on the spot. Behind her, she heard Kyle laugh, a short, sharp bark of victory, before a security guard finally grabbed his arm. "Hey, get your hands off me." The doors closed behind her and she was once again blessedly, horribly alone. 2 weeks. For 14 days the penthouse was a tomb. The gleaming marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows echoed with a profound, suffocating silence. The media room, once filled with the shrieks and giggles of 3 children, was dark. Owen's laughter was gone. He shuffled through the massive apartment like a small, sad ghost, pushing his food around his plate, asking the one question Reed couldn't answer. Why can't we see Mia and Sophie anymore? Reed had lost everything. Not his company. Not his money. He'd lost the life, the warmth, the sound of Tessa laughing at his terrible cooking, the feeling of Mia's head resting on his shoulder during movie night, the quiet, profound satisfaction of Sophie slipping her small hand into his. He sat in his home office, the seat of his power, and finally understood. His money hadn't been a tool, it had been a bomb. He'd seen Tessa's problem and in his arrogance had assumed he could fix it. He'd never once stopped to think that what she'd actually needed wasn't a savior. She just needed a partner. His fix wasn't a kindness, it was a violation. He'd stolen her victory. He'd taken her hard-earned, gritty climb and turned it into a lie. He saw it clearly now. He was just a different, more sophisticated version of Kyle. Both of them had tried to control her. Kyle used threats, he used money. The realization was agonizing. He had to make it right. But how? An apology was meaningless. Words were cheap. He didn't call his driver. He called his broker. For 2 days he systematically, ruthlessly sold. He liquidated a massive portion of his personal stock in Donnelly Enterprises, a move that sent ripples through the financial world. He didn't care. He put all of it, a 9-figure sum, into a new, public, irrevocable trust. He filed the paperwork himself. He called it the Claire Donnelly Foundation. Its mission was simple, public, and transparent: the complete eradication of medical debt for single-parent families. But it was just money. It was just a structure. It was the same mistake he'd made before, just on a larger scale and less. He didn't call. He didn't text. He didn't send flowers or a car or an apology letter written on expensive stationery. He took a simple manila file folder, got in his regular guy Audi, and drove to her apartment. He walked up the 3 flights of dimly lit stairs, his heart hammering. He knocked. It took a full minute. The door opened a crack held by the chain. Her face was pale. She was thinner, and the shadows under her eyes were back. She looked at him with an expression so cold it stopped his breath. "Tessa," he said, his voice raw. "Please. I'm not here to ask for anything. I'm not here to fix anything. I'm here to give you this." He slid the folder through the gap. "It's the Articles of Incorporation for a new foundation. It's real. It's public. It's fully funded. It's my apology." She was silent, just staring at him. "I was a coward," he said, the words spilling out. "I was a coward, and I was arrogant. I lied because I was terrified you wouldn't see me, that you'd only see the money. And in the end, I became the very thing I was afraid of. I used that money to control you, to play God. And I destroyed the only thing that's made me feel alive in 3 years." Tears were streaming down his face now. He didn't wipe them away. "I started this foundation. But it's just money, Tess. It's a pile of cash, and I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to help people. Not really. But you do. You've lived it. You know what they need, not what a billionaire thinks they need." She slowly unhooked the chain and opened the door, the folder clutched in her hand. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said, taking a step back, showing he wouldn't force his way in. "I'm not asking you to take me back. I'm asking you to run this, to take it over. The folder has the paperwork. The salary for the executive director is, well, it's more than fair. It's your job. If you want it, no strings. No benefactor. As an equal partner. As my boss. Please." Reed finally did the right thing. He gave up control and offered true partnership. He's trying to make amends for the heartbreak his lies caused. If you believe everyone deserves a real second chance after they've done the work, hit that like button. Only those who hold grudges forever will refuse. 1 year later. Christmas. The penthouse was chaotic. It was loud. It was messy. A massive, slightly lopsided Christmas tree dominated the living room, covered in a chaotic mix of elegant glass ornaments and lopsided handmade creations from the kids. Tessa, laughing, was sitting on Reed's shoulders, stretching to put the star on top. "Just a little higher. I got it." "You got it?" Reed called up, his arms wrapped around her legs, steadying her. "We got it," she announced as the star lit up. "Hooray!" Owen, Mia, and Sophie shouted in unison from the couch, where they were failing to wrap a present for their grandpa. Tessa slid down Reed's back, landing on her feet and kissing him. It was a real kiss. Messy, happy, and earned. Tessa Hayes, now Tessa Donnelly, was the executive director of the Claire Donnelly Foundation. In its first year, under her fierce, empathetic, and no-nonsense leadership, it had cleared the medical debt of over 500 families. Reed was a hands-on dad. He'd stepped back, promoting a new CEO and taking the title of chairman. He was at every school play. He packed lunches. He was currently covered in glitter and tape. "Okay, team," Tessa announced, clapping her hands. "Hot chocolate. Now." The five of them, a loud, jumbled, impossibly happy family, piled into the kitchen. Reed grabbed the mugs, Tessa poured the cocoa, and the three kids fought over who got the most marshmallows, their laughter echoing off the marble, finally, making the massive apartment feel like a home.